Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. In this tutorial we are going to be making a similar tumbler that we have in the past. However, I'm going to show you how to do a double offset for your vinyl. To start, we are using a 12-ounce morning mug from the Steel Magnolia. These were pretty hard to come by last time I used them in my tutorials, but they are in stock as of today. So definitely go grab you some and use Brittany 10 to get a discount. I grabbed my DIY Speedy PD epoxy so that I can have a quick drying epoxy for my glitter application. I'm not putting epoxy on the bottom because we are doing a waterfall sort of glitter, so I don't want that to go onto the bottom, and I'm trying to avoid the handle as much as possible. It's okay if a couple specks make it there, but normally when I make any sort of mug that has a handle, I do try to avoid if the design will allow it. And this one we're not glittering all over, so I only ended up with a couple of specks on that handle, and it makes it a whole lot easier to epoxy. So I grabbed these two glitters, Miss Independent and Americana from PDB Creative Studio. I was a little torn to which one I wanted to use. The Miss Independent had a little more reds in it than the blues that was in Americana, so we could have a little more contrast of colors. But if I were to have a red base, I definitely would have used the other glitter. I just wanted to show you both because you definitely need both for your Patriotic collection, and of course if you used a different base color. So what I did with the glitters is I took the cap off and went heavy around the top rim. I popped the cap back on because they do come with a shaker lid from PDB Creative Studios, and all the glitters come in bottles, which is super helpful and keeps me really nice and organized. And I just sprinkled from the top and let that fall down like a waterfall. Once I had my glitter in the areas that I wanted, I went over and tapped down all of the chunky bits just so our first epoxy layer would give more coverage. If you do this step, use a piece of parchment paper to protect your hand or a glove. I clearly was not thinking, and I do this all the time, but you definitely should have something to protect your hand from the epoxy. I let that sit for about 2 hours, and then we went in and epoxied until our tumbler was smooth. I have my TeckWrapcraft holographic glossy vinyl pack here. This is one of their sample packs, and I absolutely love that they do sample packs like this. You can get 12 by 12 sheets, and it gives you a huge collection of colorful vinyl. This holographic is one of my favorites from them because, I mean, it speaks for itself. It's absolutely beautiful, super bright, and holographic colors. I have used many holographics in the past, and nothing compares to the bright and vibrantness of the TeckWrapcraft. I grabbed my red and blue matte vinyls that we saw in the clipboard tutorial and cut 4 by 4 sheets of those two as well as the holographic. I removed the protective layers off of them, which is just another added bonus to the TeckWrapcraft vinyl. All of them come with protective layers so that when you are ready to use, you can take it off and your vinyl is not scuffed or scratched up. I created this SVG myself, and it will be available in my Brittany Barnes Boutique Tumbler art group, so definitely join, and it will be pinned to the top of the group for you to download. I sized it to 3.5 inches wide, which is pretty much standard for all of my tumblers, and I highlighted and created a 0.035 offset. Then I took the offset and created an offset of it as well at 0.035. And I get a lot of questions of how I decide how I want my vinyl to be layered. So before I even cut my decal out, I play around with the colors and Design Space. So for this one, I wanted to do a red base and of course the silver holographic instead of white, and then a navy blue on top. So I just changed the colors of my layers, layered them up to make sure that they would coordinate and they would look good once I have them cut. And then I just changed all of them back to a same color so that they would print on the same sheet. I got my Cricut machine about 7 years ago, and I made just decals for probably about 2 years. And the entire time I've dealt with the really thick, like old-fashioned outdoor vinyl with really thick paper backing on the back. And some of you know exactly what I'm talking about. That stuff is hard to deal with, but I made so many decals back then, I could probably make them in my sleep. There have been lots of improvements since then, but my biggest pet peeve is working with the holographic vinyls, or like the specialty vinyls. It seems that even still now when I get them, sometimes they still are the same. They're really thick, they have that thick backing on them, but that is not the case with TeckWrapcraft. All of their vinyls are thin, and the backing is thin too. So whenever you weed them, it comes off so easy. You don't have vinyl letters that are damaged. And as you can see, this is a super thin cut, and especially on the holographic, it was the same. It was really thin and easy to weed, and then it just removes so clean from the backing. Once I had all of those weeded, I took a sheet of my favorite transfer tape, put that on top of the very first layer, and I took a piece of parchment paper, put it in behind that to help me layer these vinyls better. I do have a light pad, and I will link that tutorial for you down in the comments, but I do have a light pad that I love, but I know everyone does not have those or does not want that expense, so I wanted to show you another way that you can easily layer vinyl. Leave a little bit of your transfer tape exposed on the edge of your parchment paper, line your decals up, and then once you have it in place, push that piece down that is still exposed and remove your parchment paper, and you can press your decal back down. And to easily remove this from the backing, I just flipped it over, put pressure with my little squeegee tool, and remove the back as I was pressing the opposite way. Comes off really clean, and you are ready to add on your third layer. To add my decal onto the coffee mug, I just lined it up so that I can find my center point, and I applied the decal, and static sort of sucked it onto the cup. So I did end up removing this one completely, cutting a new one, and in between that I did add on some stars at the top. So this is sort of going to be out of order, but I did want to show you this really awesome America pack from Southern Belle Glitter. These are the rub-on transfers that you saw me use in the past. I wanted to add a little something extra, and in the video or the photo you really can't see them because they do blend into the colors a little bit, but in person it adds a nice little touch, and you can see these little stars coming down from the top with the glitter. So since there were just a few and some of them were cut off, I just trimmed out in little bunches so that I can apply the half stars up at the top of my cup first and then work my way down just a little bit. I didn't have any special place that I tried to put these. I just wanted them where my decal was going to go to break it up a little bit and add a little bit more to the design. Like I said, it is kind of hard to see here where these are going, but once you apply the epoxy, and especially when you have this cup in person, you can see that added extra detail. And at this point, I did cut another decal and add that on, and it was time to add our final layers of epoxy. Now, when I have a tumbler with a handle, I always turn my turner off, put that handle straight up, and do a very thin layer of epoxy around the handle. You do not want any of your epoxy to pool around the bottom, because when it rolls off of the handle and down to the base of the tumbler, it can make it really thick. And if you have any bubbles in your epoxy, I always do, because I mix incredibly fast. I'm an impatient person, so I mix fast and I worry about popping the bubbles with my torch. If it's super thick around the bottom of the handles, you're not going to get all of those bubbles out. Speedy Petey is a thick viscosity epoxy, which I have found is really helpful when working with handles on a tumbler, because it tends to stay in place a lot better than a thinner viscosity epoxy. It is also pettable or dry to the touch, meaning that you can run your finger across the top or the surface of your epoxy and it not stick in about 30 minutes to an hour, so it does set up much quicker than a regular epoxy, which also prevents extra time for it to flow down the handle of your cup. Once I had my epoxy on, I went over with a torch and we were all done. And although we did do 3 layers of vinyl, the TeckWrapcraft Vinyl is really thin, so this still only needed 2 final coats of epoxy. I'm partial to all things red, white, and blue, so I hope that you love this tumbler as much as I do. Don't forget that free SVG is available in my Brittany Barnes Boutique Tumbler art group. All products I used will be listed in the description below, as well as some discount codes. Like this video if you enjoyed and learned something from it, and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell in the corner to be notified anytime a new tutorial drops. That is all for today. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you next time.